agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Penasini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, joining me for another set of previews and some sundry news and reviews. A lot happening in the NRL this week is my good mate, Sixties. Craig, it's been more of a week from hell than a hell of a week for you, mate.
Yes, John, look, first of all, just a thank you to everyone who has reached out just to say they hope Mum's doing okay. Mum actually has met a lot of people at the footy. She's was coming to junior reps and some lower grade games and has got to meet a lot of people who she really enjoys. Mum enjoys, meeting people and getting to have a bit of a gas bag about the football. So, yeah, look, it's been a tough week, but, she's getting incrementally better. There's nothing life-threatening with it, but it's been a tough week. But look, John, what I would like to do is send my Cumberland Throws condolences to the family of Len Detling. I mentioned on the Tuesday news podcast that we were thinking of the family. Len passed away in the morning yesterday. I just want to say to Len's family, Len meant a lot to the Cumberland Throw. I got to meet Len at training. He's incredibly passionate Parramatta supporter, and there would be a lot of people out there who had also met Len through his support of the Parramatta Eels. And to give people an idea of the level of support that Len had, Len had been battling cancer for the last couple of years, well, more than the last couple of years, but I think it was nearly 3 years ago. He wasn't given very much longer, and he just fought and fought and fought. And to give an idea about how much he fought and how much Parramatta meant to him, I caught up with Len at the Granville Open training session earlier this year, and Len was literally there in his hospital bed. And that's not an exaggeration. That's how much he battled. That's how brave he was. That's how much Parramatta meant to him. And then in similar circumstances, he was at a game at the stadium earlier this year, again, literally in his hospital bed, there to support the Eels. Honestly, it just amazed me. Just his Len's tenacity. And he was a regular listener to the podcast. He was a regular reader of all the posts. He said quite often about what, not just what Parramatta meant to him, but, just incredibly kind words about the Cumberland Throw. And, Len's going to be someone that we miss, but we'll think of often. So, just if the Detling family just know that we're thinking of you, and we'll always have a place for Len in our hearts. So, it's always sombering to start off with a podcast with that sort of news, but I also think it's important just to let people know that someone that they may be familiar with through the football has passed away, and and also just to get that message to Len's family. John, just moving along, just another personal thing I wanted to mention, and of a brighter note, I had a DM sent to me earlier today, and as it turned out, it was from a former student, and he reached out just to confirm that I was who he thought I was in the way of a former teacher, and so that person, Edward Williams, it goes right back to he was a student, I think between 2000 and 2004 at the school that I taught at, and just to make sure the memories came flooding back, he sent me a photo of the cricket team that I coached that he was in 2004, and yes, it certainly brought back memories, the faces of the kids in the team, and also an image of me being, over 20 years younger and probably more than 20 kilos lighter than I am now. So it's sort of like a little reminder.
Very relatable.
Mate, drop some weight now. You can't do anything about your age, but drop some weight now. So, so I wanted to, I said to Edward that I'd give him a shout out. He actually, his family moved from Fiji to Australia in 2000, and he won tickets to a Parramatta Broncos game literally a couple of months after he arrived in Australia, after the family arrived in Australia. And from then he's been hooked on the Eels. He now lives down in Victoria. He's a truck driver down in Victoria, and he's still passionate about para. Said the podcast helps him with the drives through the day with his work as a truck driver. But yeah, still passionate about the Eels, always will be. So I said I'd give Edward a shout out, and I really do appreciate you extending the message to me today, Edward. It was great to hear from you, and look forward to hearing from you many more times. Okay, John, apart from that, we should at this point also give a shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and also to Para Leagues, the home of the Eels. And of course, speaking of Para Leagues, the Cumberland Throw has actually joined forces with the Talking Para podcast on Sunday. There was a paid event that was being held in Stirlos. It's actually now been made into a free event for punters. So it's before the game in Stirlos, 1:30 to 3:30. There will be player appearances, so current Eels that will be there. There will be, I guess, a panel sort of question and answer that will be set up there with that. They'll also be there for people to meet. $5 beers, lucky door prize, a 2025 jersey that's being given away, trivia. Adam from Talkin' Para and myself will do a bit of a preview of the game. So as I said, it's free, 1:30 to 3:30. The game kicks off, I think, 4:05, isn't it, John?
Yeah, 4:05, yep.
Wilson. Yep. So if your ritual is always to get into Para Leagues before the game, it is an away game. It's the away game it's sort of a home game, but it's technically an away game.
It's the home.
So that's why John and I aren't scheduled to be there. So, but we've got the Leagues Club has put on this different event there for the away game. So even if you're not a regular at Para Leagues, hey, come in. It's free. And the beers are only $5. There's a range of $5 beers that are available. Some
good swag as well. So it's a pretty good little event. Yeah,
absolutely. So we'll see you there. And finally, before we get into the previews, John, news.com actually picked up the tweet from, well, do we call them tweets now? But the message on X-Rays. Yeah, our man who runs our X account, Mitch Clark, and he decided to throw in a comment about Gus Gould's crazy comments about
a bit of a pile onto Gould's dubious comments about
you shouldn't have to ground the ball. It's a silly rule to ground the ball over the try line.
I love NFL. Let's just break the plane. Just go across, run across the invisible wall that's there on the try line, and then you scored. Yeah, come on.
So Mitch put out a tweet about Gould's comments being next level, and And then there was someone that came in and said, "Well, when did the rule come in?" And I think Mitch replied, "Well, they had it in time for the start of the 1908 season."
The the game that we piggybacked off, rugby union, it's been there for a long time.
Yes. So
certainly old enough to
anyway,
vote, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So no, it wasn't. Was it news.com? Yeah, it was news.com.
It was news.com. Yes. Yeah.
Yep. So they had an article just about that commentary because it was what got me, John, was the co-commentators trying to validate it.
Yeah.
Afterwards, there should be a different rule. Like if you're sliding over the line and there's no one else in contact with you and the ball's on your arm, that should all be okay. So, like you said, let's just go full bore, become NFL.
Yeah, as long as you break the plane, that the upright wall where the goal line is, and you're in possession of the ball, try. Try easy. Alrighty, and one last shout out, of course. You mentioned our sponsors who give us the corporate backing, but if you are listening or watching to our podcast and do want to support TCT, you can join our Patreon for $5 a month. And as we said before, we are working on those higher tiers of support, but we don't want to charge people anything more than what is there right now without anything worthy of greater support. And those who are supporting us, we do appreciate it. Big fella, let's move on because...
Oh, and also... The other best way they can support is the like and subscribe.
Yeah, so also like and subscribe, which is the free way, which is it costs you nothing.
Or share the video, send it to your Parramatta mates.
Help us grow.
Share the podcast with your Parramatta mates. The more that the Cumberland Throw content is seen by people, the more it comes up in the feeds for other Parramatta supporters, and that just helps. That helps us with the metrics. We're trying to build up our subscribers on YouTube, and it just helps us to get the content out there. We really appreciate the people that reach out to us because it's just constant, the people that reach out and thank us and come up and introduce themselves at our live events at the club, come up and introduce themselves at games. Michael, I believe it was, that came up and introduced himself to me at Kellyville last week. I really appreciate that, mate. My apologies if I've got the name wrong. It's been a hell of a week.
Yeah.
And it's and actually Mum was with me when he came up and introduced. So, as I said, she loves the footy. It's just a bit hard to get to NRL games. So, appreciate that, Michael.
Okay.
Mate, so much to get through.
Yeah. Before we
apologise for all the preamble that we've had to go through today.
Just 12 minutes of it, so we've done okay. And there are two quick things to hit on now before we talk the free games of Parramatta Eels football this weekend, mate. Of course, announced yesterday, I believe, on Thursday, Eels have activated the option, the club option, not a player option, it's a club option, the good kind of option, of Josh Adokar to extend his stay at the Eels to the end of 2026. If anything, 60s, the only surprise here is that it didn't come with a +1 extension, maybe. The Fox has been nothing short of outstanding for the Eels and has really recaptured his best form under Jason Riles and has been a staple on the field for the Eels on that left wing. He is killing it in terms of try scoring, killing it in terms of his ruck work, his defense, and I suppose the big one, his energy.
Yeah, and I would also say the mentoring and the guidance for the younger players at training, out on the playing field. I think we've seen Sean Russell go to another level, especially defensively.
Yes.
Since he's been partnering up on that side with the Fox, and it's obvious that they really work well together in defence. And as you just said, I'd like to think now that the Fox will finish his football career with Parramatta, and it's a really good fit. It works well for the team that Jason Riles is building at the Eels. You need that mix of experience and youth, and we're seeing all of the, Jason Riles talks about the green shoots. Young players are literally the green shoots, and having the experience around them is still ultra important. He's one of those people.
Well said, mate. So nice little extension there for the Parramatta Eels, helps round out their roster for next year. And like we were sort of alluding to, there's certainly room to negotiate a further extension, for the Fox moving forwards. But I imagine that will come later in the season, and they'll probably be even nutting it out or starting to nut it out right now. But the other thing I want to talk about before we get into the Parramatta games quickly, Game 3 and Game 1, I suppose, of the 2 Origin games. For the ladies, the Blues had secured the series, and what we saw last night was probably the scrappiest. Well, I say probably, it was definitely the scrappiest of the 3 games. The Maroons prevailing 18-14 at McDonald Jones Stadium. Tries for Mackenzie Wheel, Romy Teitzel, and Chelsea Lenarduzzi for the Cane Toads, with Lauren Brown crucially going 3 from 3. Lenarduzzi also sin-bin near the end of the game. And then for the Blues, Jess Surgis, Jamie Fressard, and Jocelyn Kelleher scoring, but Jessie Southwell 1 from 3, which was the difference in this game. Going through the best performers, you can probably give me yours, mate. I know Abby had a fantastic try saver, cracking try saver, but the Blues well below their best in this game.
Yeah, look, and I also felt we didn't see enough of Kennedy last night.
Yeah,
because when she came on, there was a noticeable lift in the energy in the team.
Yep.
And I just felt that, it dropped off. But look, I think, John, the overriding thing to me was this was probably more of what I might have expected with the series being held in the pre-season, like those sorts of errors. It was a mix of the brilliant and the crazily mixed in with a lack of attention to detail.
Yes, whereas in the first 2 games, the Blues were locked in, and that was more the exception to what we'd sort of expected. But yes, maybe with the series, I'm not going to say they took it lightly, 60s. That would be an incredible, it'd be a rude and ignorant statement to say, but we've seen it with plenty of other teams and plenty of other situations that are similar but not one-to-one. But once you've locked something up, once you've secured the premiership, the title, the trophy, whatever it is, you're not as dialed in for those 1%ers, aren't you? And that's a bit of what we saw last night. Maybe even as far as the coaching went, like you said, 60s, Kennedy getting that one stint that should have been extended, should have been given another chance to influence the game. And yeah, Queensland were obviously looking not to get swept and just wanted a little bit more than the Blues in this dead rubber.
John, I think what I was trying to say was typified by one of the most exceptional players in the team, the captain, Isabel Kelly. So in almost quick succession, there was the moment where she made an error and just sort of stood there with the ball at her feet, like going like this. And really, if the Maroons had have cleanly picked it up, they could have picked it up and gone 80 metres for a try. And it was literally like, as it was happening, I'm yelling out, fall on the ball, pick it up. Like I couldn't understand how such an amazing player, it wasn't in her head at that moment. And then, of course, there's the moment of lack of where she didn't ground the ball. Now, I can understand when, players going down and they've got the ball gripped into their arm that they might think that they've grounded the ball. But I've seen many a time in the NRL where a player slides over like that and then they get up and they literally put it down with 2 hands as they're standing up, like to say, I've grounded just in case.
Double dipping exactly on the...
Yeah, I'm grounding it. And it's strange. I've been waiting for that to happen at some stage. That time when a player slides over, the ball's in that sort of position, there's no one near them, and for whatever reason, the ball doesn't actually get grounded. And sure enough, it was the game last night. And I thought that those 2 things, and this isn't a pilot, because I think Isabel Kelly is a superstar player.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
She's, so I'm not doing a pilot. I just thought it typified how the Blues were off. They were just off. It was not, and yet there were still those moments of brilliance in the game that is also typical of Origin football and where the women's game has got. But it had that feel of this is an Origin series being played in pre-season. It's what you expect before anyone's into a groove. It highlighted, I think, even further just how amazing the earlier 2 games were.
Agreed.
because they were at a standard which I just could not believe. I just thought, man, you dish this up every week, you're gonna have sponsors queuing up. You're gonna capture the imagination of football lovers around the world for what female football athletes are able to do, and it just belied the fact that it was a pre-season hit out. Such was the standard, but yeah, it just wasn't quite there last night. There was no, as I said, there was no doubt there were big moments. And I guess you also have to give credit to Queensland because, as seems to be typical of them in both the women's and the men's, is that they hate any prospect of a 3-0
getting whitewashed, or blue washed, whatever you want to phrase it in terms of Origin.
There are no dead rubbers in Origin.
No.
They probably and look, I shouldn't put the Queenslanders above the Blues in regard to that in either the men's or the women's.
No, but the context of this series was that Queensland had lost, so
yeah,
they didn't want to get swept. Exactly. So that was how the women's game played out. New South Wales obviously securing the series back in game 2, going up 2-1 with the belt, or the championship, whatever you want to call it. And then the game before, the night before that one, so going back to Wednesday night, we had the men play their game 1 with the Blues going up to Suncorp Stadium, hostile territory, and prevailing, winning 18-6 in a game that's probably a lot closer than it should be on that scoreboard. 4 tries to 1, but the Blues could not kick a goal to save their lives in this game for whatever reason. Nathan Cleary and Zach Lomax having absolute Barry Crockers off the tee. But try scorers for the Blues, did mention his name just then, Zach Lomax, he was phenomenal. Opened the scoring for the Blues in the 24th minute, was joined by Brian To'o, Zach Lomax and Dylan Edwards, while Nathan Cleary did get a penalty goal, which helped a little bit. But on the other side, Xavier Coates scored a try, and that was missed by Val, but he also tacked on a penalty goal too. So goal kicking not the forte of either team on Wednesday night. But the Blues, look, they had a period. I think they dominated the opening 20 minutes, 60s, and Queensland sort of got some traction after that. Then the Blues took control. Then the To'o Simbin happens on halftime, and we can talk about that because that's functionally very similar to what happened to Bowie Simonson back when we played was it the Titans? Who did we play? No.
Sharks.
Sharks, not Titans, what am I saying? Yeah. Back when we played the Sharks, and all the controversy about that one. But the Blues, too talented across the park, and did Queensland get some selections wrong? Perhaps we can talk about that. But New South Wales go back-to-back at Suncorp for the first time in how long? 20-something years?
Yeah. Oh, geez. Yeah. Look, actually, it could have been. This is the symptomatic of me with years now, because when people talk about, it hasn't happened since 2000 or something like that, in my head immediately goes, about 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years. No, 2000s. Yeah, it's 2.5 decades ago now. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I feel that pain. But yeah, because the Moses, he wasn't the only one that did it. But when Moses led the Blues to the series win last year, that was the first time in 21 years or something like that, or 19 years. So that would have to be longer than that if the Blues went back-to-back at Suncorp. But regardless of how long it was, whether it was 10 years in the memory bank or 25, the Blues getting that game 1 win. And our boy, look, this wasn't the greatest game of State of Origin, was it, 60s? It started strongly, but it then quickly broke into a bit of a scrap fest. But the Blues...
What I was impressed with, John, however, was defence.
Yes, that was where the Blues really shone. I agree.
Yeah. That, especially for New South Wales, was all Origin standard, and like the upper level Origin standard defence. Some of the times where I thought there's a try coming here, and somehow New South Wales shut it down. And Mitch Moses had a couple of big moments himself.
Cutting down. Was it?
They were sending plenty of traffic his way.
Was it Nano that was running at him? I'm trying to think which back row was coming at him, and he just cut him down every time. Likewise, probably the crucial moment at halftime, which you don't see, it was in the sheds, but evidently Zach Lomax was the player that volunteered to swap sides during the sin bin to try and put the clamps on Xavier Coates, which was, it's straightforward, but also a great move from Zach. And I believe he ended up picking up the Players Player Award. I don't think he got man of the match. That went to Payne Haas, who also had a good game. But Lomax getting the player gong. And, yeah, he had a hell of a game, 60s. There was the one drop ball, but beyond that, I think he went for like 230 metres, scored 2 tries, broke a ton of tackles, and the violence of his ruck work. The Maroons tried to tee off on him and just could not. He was just pushing him back all game. So hell of a...
What a great acknowledgement as well for any player when they receive a player's player award from a game, because that recognition of the work that you do, because for people watching the game, you might look at someone and say, yeah, they've had a pretty good game, or you look at the stats and say, yeah, they're not bad stats, but then it's the intangibles that your teammates really know about, like what you're going through out on the field, what's been asked of you in the sheds, or in this case, what you've volunteered to do in the sheds. I think and that's probably a mark of who Zach Lomax is as an individual, as a player, and what he brings to any team, and I guess why the Eels are lucky to have him there. People need to bear in mind, we haven't seen, because of injury, what having both Mitch Moses and Zach Lomax will bring for Parramatta.
We've got the barest taste of it in the last
one game.
The last game before
one game of them as of the Momax.
Yeah, before they went to camp.
So, there's so much to look forward to there, but and hopefully both have pulled through unscathed.
There was some speculation about Mitchell Moses. We'll talk about that in the actual game itself, because that would have to postulate about potential replacements there. But I think the indication was the club believe he will be okay. But there was some talk about ice on his calf. But that's State of Origin 1 in the books. Blues go up 1-0. I believe we now head to Sydney. Is that right, 60s, before we go to the neutral venue? I think
you're asking me in the wrong week.
we go to Optus next. I was wrong. So we're off to the Bears, Perth Bears, not Bears Perth, and 8:05.
There might be some people who, as part of their package to travel over to Perth, might go and visit Bears Perth.
Yep.
It's,
like I said, we joked about it, but there is absolutely an opportunity for the Perth Bears to have a lot of fun with the membership there, and try and be, some people roll their eyes at it, but inclusive and just a corner of the market in Perth. But yeah, we're off to Perth next, and then we come back to Accor Stadium back at the that one's in July. So Wednesday the 18th, next one is when we're going to be losing our prospective Blues players. But that now takes us to the actual Parramatta portion. We are how long? 28 minutes in. Jeez. Let's power through.
Are we losing players again? I don't think we are. I think we would maybe having 2 buys.
Now we do have the 2 buys, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. We got at least 1 Origin buy. We might have 2, you're right. Which would be very nice, considering that we're set to lose Momax in both those games. Because even if players like Tom Tebojevic come good, I don't think you can get rid of Zach Lomax now. He's a weapon out there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start off with the under-21s 60s. This one has been bumped around a little bit. When we recorded that news podcast on Tuesday, this was in the 6:30 p.m. slot tonight as we record on a Friday. This one was meant to be out at Windsor, the sports complex there, but has now been moved to 12 p.m. Saturday at St. Mary's, one of the big sporting complexes there out in the west of Sydney. Eels taking on the Penrith Panthers. And I think in this grade, this is going to be a pretty well-matched game, right? Yeah, Panthers in 3rd, Eels in 4th coming into this week. Both teams.
And I should encourage people to head out there, because as far as lower grade suburban venues are concerned,
St. Mary's is very nice, yeah.
It is very good. There's a sizable stand there, great viewing from there, and there's also plenty of parking there. So
ticks all the main boxes you want from a lower grades venue. So yeah, 3v4, both teams on 8 wins apiece. Just the for and against separating the Panthers from the Eels. Penrith with better attack. That is the difference between the two teams. Eels slightly better defense, but Penrith reasonably better attack. But they come to this game evenly matched, which is a great setting for round 13. We'll look at the Parramatta Eels team 60s, and we've got another debutant here, which will be very exciting to talk about. and we get him off the top of the list here. Cameron Bamblett, former Panther, came across the Eels this year in the SG Ball, played in the halves early on to deputise Lorenzo Talatona, who was injured, then shifted the fullback later in the season where he shone, and he now gets a chance in the under-21s, and he'll be working alongside Muhammad El-Madine and Dom Farrugia, another debutant, as part of that back three. And Dom's pathway to the Flegg's pretty crazy because he's actually been an 18th man for reserve grade before he played in the Jersey Flegg. Fair effort there to Dom, and he's one of our favourite prospects in the pipeline. Big physical winger, can kick goals, runs like the wind, solid lad. So he'll have a great time in his Flegg debut. The Eels have Tuvaka Palu at left centre. Good to see Antioch Faitala Mariner back in the fold. 60s, I think he was nicked up last few weeks, but he is back to help strengthen the back line. Matthew Hunter drops back to the Jersey Flegg after a week in the New South Wales Cup. He was part of that win against the Seagulls in reserve grade. He works alongside Joshua Lynn in the halves. Lynn also enjoying a good week in the Flegg, spearheading the Eels to a win against their arch rivals out at Kellyville. In the front row, Damascus Nemia, Jack Hudson, Tyrese Lakini. In the back row, Domenico Destrada. Sorry, Dom. He's on one edge with Will Lewis on the other. Dom's brother, his twin brother, Raf, at lock forward. And then you got, on the interchange, Lorenzo Talatona, very unlikely to be dropped back to the bench this week after being one of the best on field against Manly. But he's got that ability to play between the halves and dummy half. And he'll work there alongside Tom Summer, Josiah Funaro-Ayuta, and Ieti Samuelo, who's back after a bit of a layoff. And he's a good inclusion for the team. 60s, physical, firebrand, a lot of aggression. So he'll help the bench there. And then 18th man, not making his debut, at least not yet. Maybe on game day it could be a move, but good to see another SG World graduate, Ryder Talangi, one of our premier front row prospects there, getting a look into the Jersey Flegg. So very exciting Flegg team. Really keen to see what Cameron Bamblett and Dom Farrugia can do on their debuts, but also very strong across the park. That back line, El-Madine, Palu, Faitala Mariner, experienced this year and putting on good runs. Halves, Hunter and Lynn, very strong. Front row, Nemia, Hudson, Lakini. Back row, Destratus, Lewis, Destratus. It's a good team, 60s, and they're meeting an equally well-positioned opponent. But right now, and I'm not saying they're going to win every game, but you have that feeling that the Eels could go into any game against any opponent and have a great chance of winning. They're playing that kind of football under, a growing coach in his own right there. I always have a brain fade.
Jordan
Rankin, yeah, because I'm like, I know it's not. Don't say Josh Hodgson. Don't say Josh Hodgson. He's in the Harold Matts. Jordan Rankin, it's the other former player. Rankin's growing into his own as a coach, and he's doing a great job with these young Chargers. They're playing some good football.
John, there's a part of me that thinks Jordan Rankin must have a headache every week trying to juggle the talent that's there, because there's players.
The team was post about this. Someone's coming in saying, how does he pick the team? Like, even before the SG Ball players were in there, he was having issues trying to facilitate selections. And now he's got the SG Ball team, which is among one of the more talented squads we've ever seen at this club. And he's got to juggle all those selections. I don't know. It's not easy.
Look, I've honestly got no idea how he's doing it, because you look at the team and you go, there's players missing from this team this week.
Yes.
And like the first one that jumps to mind is the SG Ball graduate, Big Isaac Jim, right, who was terrorising the opponents last week.
Yes, he was.
And there's no room for him there. Now, I don't know whether he's picked up an injury or not, but and there have been injuries to the squad this year. But yeah, just seeing people, first of all, making way so that there's SG Ball graduates who are making their debut, and they can have a look at them being elevated as part of the squad. But you almost feel like there's a bit of fluidity around the team in Jordan rotating opportunities for different players. And whilst there are core players that are there, there is also a lot of movement now. I'm waiting for someone like Lockie Kanikis, for example, to make his debut, and yet in front of him, he's got Jack Hudson, and he's had Paddy Spence there, and Paddy has been in recent weeks been the starting hooker, and he's not listed there at all this week because Lorenzo is probably going to fill in at dummy half when Jack Hudson is given a rest. So it's crazy. And as you said, Lorenzo really shone last week, and now he's back on the interchange rather than being the starting 5'8". And the reason for that, of course, is that Matthew Hunter comes back from New South Wales Cup to play in the 5'8" position, and he's been the captain of the team and has been a standout player in the team this year, to the point that he was called up to New South Wales Cup ahead of Josh Lynn. So there's a wealth of riches there for Jordan Rankin. The Panthers, they're up in the top 8 at the moment, are they not?
They're third. They actually won, like they're equal to
Yep.
us on wins, but slightly ahead on for and against. And I'm just going to quickly pull up their run. Penrith Panthers here. So they come into this game on the backs of a loss to Newcastle. Went down by 2 points there, but they beat the Tigers pretty comfortably before the bye. So they've gone lost the Knights, bye, beat the Tigers, beaten by the Raiders, scraped by the Dogs, beat the Roosters. So they've been like win-loss essentially.
Okay. So I haven't really been able to see anything of the Panthers this year in Jersey Flegg, but all we can go on is the form that's been there for the Eels Jersey Flegg team. Now, there's been a couple of ordinary games there where they haven't been at their best. And then there's moments, there's a massive scope for improvement, because there's been moments in games where they will drop off their intensity and a few errors will creep in. Now, last week against Manly, they were in total control in the first half, and then just went like 1, 2, 3 errors, and it was 1, 2, 3 tries.
Yeah, from 18-0 to 18-16 in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, and it literally all spiraled from, I think, might have been an error in the set after points.
Yes,
that
it was.
led to the first try.
About 15 metres off our goal line, we dropped the ball in a tackle.
Yeah. So, and it seemed to be as well that the ref was finding fault with the Eels' discipline on the back of errors as well. So that's an area they have to tidy up. Just so maybe seeing that defence improve a little bit, because we know that when they pull the trigger, there's a lot of points in this team.
Yeah.
Just got to get the discipline, the errors down a bit, and defend any errors a little bit better. But I do expect them to win, John.
Yes, I agree. This will be a big hit out for them up against the Western Sydney rival, who is equally seated on the ladder. But they might lose. But like I said earlier, 60s, they come into every game this year, including this week, and you just think they've got a great chance of winning, because that's how balanced the squad is. Rankin's got them playing great football. They're not incapable of an error, as we just mentioned, against Manly. They had their lapses, but geez, they can score a try. And in general, their defense has been excellent. They've had points put on them here and there, but week to week, they've been one of the more consistent defensive outfits in the grade. So I think the Eels should be in a position to win here, and that takes us to the New South Wales Cup, where, again, the Eels meet the Penrith Panthers. Spoiler, they're playing the Panthers in all 3 grades. What a shock. This one is the curtain raiser out on Sunday. Played at CommBank Stadium, 1:45 p.m. kickoff. So if you're at the game, you can get the 2-for-1 value there. Otherwise, catch it on Bar TV. Eels taking on Penrith. And if I just pull up the ladder here, where is my ladder gone? One here, reserve grade is here. Yeah, Penrith, they're doing okay now. They had it started a bit slow, but they're now in 5th place with 6 wins and 5 losses. Eels ahead, 8 wins, 1 draw. So they've got a nice little buffer here, 5 points on the Panthers, but certainly not a fait accompli that the Eels will win this one. And they look like this at fullback, Apa Twaddle or Te Horanui Twaddle. You've got Jake Tungo and Samuel Luizu on the wings, Araz Namva and Richard Penasini in the centres. Ronald Volkman will partner Dean Hawkins, who comes back to this grade because Mitchell Moses is expected to back up from State of Origin. Hawkins having a career-best game in the NRL and then getting bumped back to the New South Wales Cup. That is the life of a backup, isn't it, 60s? That's how it goes. In the front row, though, you've got Woody Warame-Greg alongside Tony Mattielli, Brendan Hands at dummy half. They're doing the Swaparooskies there between him and Joey. Seems to be a horses for courses gambit here between who starts against which opposition. In the back row, we've got Matt Dury and Will Latu. Charlie Geimer is at lock forward, so a good back row there. I mentioned Joey Lussick. He is in the 14. He partners Brock Parker, Saxon Pryke, who's been called back up into New South Wales Cup on the back of an excellent game against Manly in the Flegg. And then Bryce Cartwright, demoted to the bench there this week. Taking on the Panthers, who we got here, Dane Laurie, Jesse McQueen, Paul Alamotti, Jack Cole. We've seen Trent Tolau play a little bit of NRL too. Billy Scott's a pretty highly rated prospect there. Austin Diaz, former Eels prospect a long time ago. And that seems to be the long and short of their players there. It's not a bad team. And I wonder what's going on with Paul Alamotti 60s, because Penrith fans have been saying he's one of their best players this year. I don't know if he did something wrong last week against Newcastle, but being bumped down to Reggie's. And that means that there's going to be a pretty spicy matchup for, what is it? Does he play right usually? That would mean that...
I'm pretty sure he's on the right side, yeah.
Yeah, so that would mean that Araz Namva has got his work cut out for him this week. Be a good hit out for the young centre. You always you got to, like, treasure's maybe not the right word, but you got to really look forward to these NRL matchups in the New South Wales Cup, because it's how you really let yourself know how close you are to the standard that's required of you at the level above. So good.
Yeah, I'm stunned that Alamotti's been dropped. Unless it was, and I didn't really watch that loss of theirs. I watched bits of it, but not enough that I would have identified him as a
I felt
problem.
like it was mostly Brad Schneider getting bullied by Dylan Lucas for most of the game. So I don't know. But coaches obviously look at way more stuff than we do in the context. And, Ivan Cleary, you're probably going to back the guy that's won 4 straight premierships to get the call right in terms of selection.
Yeah. Unless he was late to training or something like that.
It could be something like that too, yeah. That's another thing that you don't consider on surface value. But this one, the curtain raiser at CommBank 60s, Eels coming into this one on the back of a win against Manly. It wasn't pretty, but they got the job done. Scored a lot of points, but conceded a few. If I just pull up, and once again, I'm on the wrong website for this one. And here we go. What are the Penrith Panthers been up to in this grade 60s? So they come into this one being handled pretty comfortably by Knights, who we dealt with the other week. They lost 36-16. They had a bye. They easily handled the Magpies, lost to the Raiders, lost to the Dogs, beat the Roosters. That's their last 5-6 weeks of results. And again, you don't win or lose a game based on recent form. It does give you some indication of what you're to expect. But yeah, they lost to the Knights. Eels handled that one pretty easily, 30-10 when they met a couple of weeks ago. It leaves you reasonably confident. Like, you don't want to be arrogant, but you are reasonably confident the Eels should get this one done. Especially with the reinforcements they've got this week. Dean Hawkins comes back into the grade. Matty Hunter's done a good job there when asked to fill in, but Hawkins is the seasoned vet there, and we saw what he's capable of against the Manly Seagulls in the NRL. So yeah, I think the Eels win this one, mate. I don't want
to. It's a very strong. Look, we've got a very strong spine.
Yeah.
When you look at it, because you've got players that have decent experience in first grade. They're not like veteran NRL players, but they've had their sprinkling of experience.
Volkman,
So
Hawkins,
both
Hands,
halves.
Lussick,
Yep. And then like to have Hands as the starting dummy half, and then Lussick coming off the interchange in New South Wales Cup is, that's almost ridiculous to be able to have that as your starter and your backup.
By a similar token, the pack's no longer embarrassingly experienced in terms of NRL reps, but Greg, Dury, Geimer, you got Cardi on the bench. They add up. That gives them the ability to roll up the sleeves. And then you've got some young, hungry players there in Matteelli, Latu. I mean, also Geimer too, don't get me wrong. But he's got a few NRL reps to his name, so he helps lead the standards there. And Charlie's really flourished in recent weeks. We've seen him, I don't know if it's him getting back to not necessarily full fitness 60s, because I don't think players are fully fit during the season. This is how it works. You're always carrying a niggle. But maybe he got over whatever was holding him back a bit, or he's just managed to get his sea legs or game legs under him, as it were. But Charlie's been really good in the last few weeks. And that's
he's played as a... Here's the way that I would word his performances. In recent weeks, he's been a presence on the field.
Yeah.
Like,
there's been defense or offloading. There's been something that he's brought to the field each game, and it's good. He's a player that's going to be part of the squad for the NRL, that is, in the near future. And we saw in his rookie year, a couple of games that he played, some great signs, but just got to build him up. You know, it's sometimes guys just hit the ground running and they stay running, but sometimes that's how hard the first grade is, isn't it, making that jump? And with Charlie, Riles clearly has a plan and is doing a good job building him up. So good signs there from Charlie. Equally, Will Latu, another player we're monitoring in terms of a potential NRL debut down the road. He continues to play some good football on the edges, and I think this is every game he can bank now where he's going plus in terms of performance is huge. I think it's I know that we've seen Gideon really start to emerge and flourish, but there is still space for another guy on the edges to make an impact, and I think that Will Latu's one to monitor there. Up at Twiddle, 60s. We saw a bit of boom and bit of bust there from him last week against Manly. He got bulldozed a couple of times at the last line. Manly's big right centre, I think it was, got him once or twice. But he's also creating a lot. We saw him break the line. He got the pass wrong, but the initial work was fantastic. He's chiming in beautifully down the right, which is actually the sort of the non-dominant playmaking side for most players. And I think that's a positive that he can work so well down the non-dominant side. He's, again, not a player I'm saying is kicking down the doors for an NRL selection right now, but Arpa's a really fun prospect. He's got a lot of utility value, can play fullback, can play 5'8", and I dare say that if he was given the chance to broaden his skill sets even further, could probably cover centre and wing as well. And I sort of made the comparison there could be a bit of Parramatta's Adam Dwahi, pre-injuries, obviously, because Adam's got some incredible versatility for the Tigers and for South Sydney before that, and I think Arpa's doing a really nice job this year.
Yeah, I mean, he is an incredibly versatile player. He was late into the pre-season because he got an injury right towards the end of the season last year, which then, of course, I think it required an operation. A bit late getting back to the pre-season, had an NRL pre-season. When he did come back, people saw him in the trials, which created a lot of interest in his progress.
Yep.
So I'd encourage people to, if they're not actually at the ground, to try and follow the stream of to watch how he's going as a potential NRL debut next year, maybe. So I'd really like, John. I'd really like to see where he goes with another NRL pre-season under his belt, because the previous year he had a partial pre-season. So he was one of a number of younger players who got the time up till Christmas with the NRL squad. And then, as I said, this year he was late coming into the pre-season, and I think he was there just before Christmas, and then went all the way through, as I said, to the trials where he got a run in the trials. Full pre-season would be great this year, and I think it will be exactly what he needs going into 2026. And then we'll start to get a really good idea about what he might offer, what position might be his best. It's arguable that he could be an option even at 5'8". So we'll see where that goes. But anyway, John, I'm tipping a win there, of course, for our Eels.
I think it could actually be close. I think the Panthers be up for this one, but again, there is no matchup in this grade where you don't think the Eels can secure a W. There's been some great teams in this. If I just quickly look at the ladder here, in the knock-on effect New South Wales Cup, the Warriors I think are probably the form team in the competition pretty cleanly. They're up at 10 wins, but Dragons and Eels 8.5 wins. The Jets 8 wins. Eels have met both those teams, and they've got their measure of them. I mean, they drew against the Dragons. That was they let that one slip, but they got on top of the Jets, and I'd have to see the Warriors head to head. I think that's the big one right now, is how do you match up against New Zealand? But I come to this one quite confident, and I think the Panthers are going to fire some shots, but with the reinforcements we got this week, with the developing young guys we just mentioned in Latu, Geimer, Twiddle, I think there's every reason to be confident about the win.
Yep, agreed. Which now takes us to the main event,
Yes,
John.
Main event, 4:05 p.m. out at CommBank Stadium. It's a home away from home game for the Parramatta Eels as they face the I suppose the homeless Penrith Panthers. They've been temporary occupants of Parramatta right now with the redevelopment.
They love it at Parramatta.
The fans might say otherwise, but we know they love it. But yes, as the away from home players this week, we take on the reigning premiers who are coming last in this game, and they look like this. That being the Penrith Panthers. Dylan Edwards before I phrase this, Ivan Cleary has indicated that all his Origin players are set to back up. So a change, as we expected in the news podcast, he's got a break from his regular broadcasting or coaching patterns in recent years. He knows that the Panthers need every win they can get now, and there is no luxury afforded to be able to rest his Origin stars as he has in recent years, where he's been 2 or 3 wins clear of pretty much everyone except Melbourne at the top of the table. But at fullback, that means you've got
Come on, Ivan. Come on. He just, show some balls, mate. Yeah. Leave the players out.
Yes. Yeah, you want to be fresh for the push at the end. Yeah, exactly. But
have some faith in the depth of your squad, mate.
The depth of his squad
got finals behind you.
Yeah, you just need to be back and was jeering him. Come on, Ivan. Don't be a coward. Don't be a cat. Rest your players. But unfortunately, those depth players got exposed badly by the Newcastle Knights of Kalen Ponga the week before. So I think that put the kibosh on any ideas of potentially resting his stars, which means that they do have Dylan Edwards lining up at fullback. Thomas Jenkins, who's been one of the more consistent players in the back line, will be on the wing, with Brian To'o, another State of Origin star, backing up on the other. Isaac Tungwell spent a week in the back row against Newcastle, but he's back in the centres, his preferred position, with Casey McLean running the opposite side of the field. Former Eels prospect and NRL player Blaise Talangi in the 6, partnering Nathan Cleary. Moses Leota, Mitch Kenny, and Lindsay Smith are in the front row. Scott Sorensen, I feel like he's been injured recently. If he has his back for the Eels, which is a classic. Yeah, he's an in, so he is back. And Liam Martin, another State of Origin player, on the edges. And speaking of State of Origin players, Isaiah Yeo, who had a great game on Wednesday night, he'll be lock forward and captain of the team. On the interchange, Luke Summerton, Matty Eisenhu, Luron Patia, and Harrison Hassett. Extend the roster: Schneider, Wake, Ricky, Laurie, Cole, Alamotti, and Diaz. A whole stack of cup players we saw there, plus Brad Schneider. So I guess he might be the fresh 18th man there, because I don't think he was named in Reggie's. Then for the Eels 60s, got a couple of changes because we have Will Penasini out via Cat 1 concussion. And we've got, I guess, some question marks over our State of Origin guys right now until they actually play or run out into the field. But at fullback, you got Isaiah Yongi. Zach Lomax is expected to back up on the right wing, with Josh Adokar, the recently re-upped or option-taken winger, on the left. Sean Russell will work on that edge with him. Jordan Samrani reprises his role in the centres this week with no Will Penasini. Then in the halves, you got Dylan Brown and Mitchell Moses. No surprises there. Parramatta's first choice halves pairing. Jack Williams and Junior Barlon named to start in the front row. Of course, Jack could be part of that three-way switch we see ahead of kickoff, usually, in the last few weeks. Riley Smith, no changes there, though. He'll start at dummy half. On the edges, Kelma Tuolangi and Gideon Katonga right and left, respectively. Jermaine Hopgood at lock forward. What I was alluding to those 60s was Jack Williams kicking out to the right edge, Kelma Tuolangi going to the bench, and then Luca Moretti coming from the interchange to start at prop forward. Since the last fortnight, it's worked well for Jason Riles. And speaking of Luca, he partners Dylan Walker, Ryan Madison, and Joash Papali on the interchange. Matt Dury, Joey Lussick, Tony Mattielli, Dean Hawkins, and Samuel Luizu on the extended roster. Bearing in mind, though, we did have a chatter in our news podcast who was reasonably confident that Joash would make way for Matt Dury in this contest. So keep that in mind. That'd be a bit rough on Joash, having done not much wrong in his debut, but maybe the priority will be to get him reps in New South Wales Cup in the halves. I don't know. He might go back and play fullback as well if that's the case. He could also just be playing this game. It could be a bit of a subterfuge, maybe. Who knows? But that's how the Eels line up. What are your main takeaways looking at those two rosters, and what are your main thoughts ahead of this game?
Okay, well, that's a strong Panthers pack. It's yes. I think that's that to me is their strength in this game, and that's notwithstanding the fact that they've got class players in Dylan Edwards and Brian To'o in the back line, and of course Nathan Cleary at halfback. The interchange, I'm going to say I think we got the measure of them on the interchange.
Yes.
And that's not being disrespectful.
You know what? Disrespect the Panthers, mate. Disrespect them.
Okay, I think our interchange shits all over their interchange. How's that
Yes.
for disrespect?
I like that. Them's fighting words. That's good, strong words.
Look, our forwards have to rise to the occasion in this one. They've done exceptionally well over the last couple of weeks. We need them to step up again. I'd like to see that three-way change happen again this week. I've got no idea whether it's going to. I wouldn't be saying anything anyway, but circumstances mean that I haven't been able to get to training this week, so I've got no background knowledge whatsoever as to whether it's on the cards or not. But I would like to see it, John, because I think there is a major difference that's made with Luca starting the game and Jack Williams on an edge. That just feels so, natural. And I think the other thing is too, I thought Kilmer did really well coming on for limited minutes off the interchange. I thought he actually was a significant contributor in those minutes that he played. He shut down a couple of dangerous moments in defence against Manly on that edge.
And that's I think, that's always the key for him, isn't it? Because he can produce with the ball in hand, but if you get him locked in, dialed in on that side of the ball, that's when he's playing good football.
Yeah. So, I don't know whether that is then an indicator that that's how he's best used. But the thing is, with someone like Jack Williams, you can start him on an edge and you can play him some decent minutes there, but you can also then keep him out there as a middle if you bring Kilmer in on an edge as well. So there's those options there, and I think that's why you're starting to see an interchange like they have there, where yes, we can carry both Dylan Walker and Joash Papali'i there on an interchange. I know it would be interesting, wouldn't it, if it went the other way with Matt Dury coming in rather than dropping out as a last-minute change, because he was probably very unlucky to be running around in New South Wales Cup, because the previous games he'd done quite well in the top grade. So it would be a strange quirk of fate that it works the other way this week.
It's not quite flag level situation with Coach Jordan Rankin, but Riles is starting to enjoy good selection dilemmas. Trying to cram more than 17 players into just 17 spots. And I say that and I knock on the wood of my desk here, because how quickly that can turn in terms of injuries and suspension. But right now, a month of good football under their belts, a big win against Manly. Yeah, the Eels are enjoying some good selection dilemmas. And Matt Dury, Joash Papali'i, absolutely at the forefront of that. And whichever way they go, I don't think Riles is wrong, right? I obviously want to be developing a young talent like Joash, but Matt Dury, he was building really nice connections with Dylan Walker for the middle. We saw some really great line running between the middle forwards there. And he gives you the ability to cover an edge and the middle too. Seen him in the New South Wales Cup named out wide. So, yeah, keen to see what happens there. Selfishly, as a fan, you always want to see the young talent. And Matt Dury's not old by any means. But you always want to see the exciting new young talent get a chance. But if Joash is overlooked this week, that certainly does not mean that he's going back to the end of the queue. He'll get his shots in the coming weeks, no doubt.
Yeah, I think he's auditioning for a bigger role down the track.
Yeah, well, there's already speculation he could be the prospective number 6 to replace Dylan Brown after he was missed out on Lachlan Galvin. And even if he isn't the number 6, he's a guy that can give you coverage at fullback through the back line, in the halves, maybe dummy half as well. And that's a great ticket to be able to hold, to put your hand up and say, I want a spot in the team next year.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that he hasn't prepared at all to play on the wing this year, like not in the slightest, and he ends up playing close to 80 minutes on the wing last week and produced some great moments in that game. His presence in the team adds, I think there's excitement for his teammates when he's out there. I mean, he's popular. They like to see him out there on the field beside them. Like they enjoy his presence on the training track with what he's done. As we said during the pre-season, I saw his footwork produce moments on the training track that you just rarely get to see. And there was one moment where he probably beat about 3 defenders in an area that was the size of a phone booth. And you think, how do you escape the clutches of 3 players with your footwork in such a small space? Barely a metre by a metre.
In a phone booth,
it was just it was just phenomenal watching little moments like that. And he'd also have fun because there was I remember one in particular where they were practicing the dive into the corner post, towards the corner post. So they had the pads there for the landing. They had the corner post there, and I think it was Scott Wisemantle was the coach working with them, and he had a big bump pad. So as they're running to dive to the corner, he's hitting them so they're out in midair and over the sideline and trying to get the ball down. So what you actually see wingers doing, they train for. So they're doing that. And so he's running up to do something similar. And as Scott Wisemantle moved across to hit him with the bump pad, he simply stepped off his right foot. And to come back the other way, of course, smiling and laughing as he did it. And, the coach and the rest of the players all burst out laughing as well. But it was just, it's a moment of, being able to bring fun to the teammates like that. And, realising he's been a bit cheeky or a bit naughty with the coach in doing that. But, you also think, well, those sorts of moments can happen in a game, can't they? If you beat the bloke on the inside as well, you might go for it. So, But anyway, I'd love his inclusion in the team. I think it brings some intangibles there besides his talent. John, the other interesting thing, of course, is players playing against their former clubs. So, of course, you've got Blaise Talungi for Penrith playing against Parramatta. Then you've got the collection of former Penrith players with Parramatta, Isaiah Iongi, Riley Smith, and Jermaine Hopgood.
Yep.
Right. So and maybe you could stretch that a little bit because I think Sean Russell might have originally played for the Windsor Junior Club before he played.
That's probably stretching a little bit, but yes,
he might have been under 12s or something like that before he was 12 or something.
You find motivation wherever you can, mate. And there's always famous stories about Michael Jordan inventing reasons to be, angry and fired up about his opposition ahead of a game. And I'm sure Sean Russell could reach within the deep recesses of his heart and his mind and say, you know what, they didn't think I was good enough way back in under 12s. But look, Penrith come into this one on the back of an ugly loss against Newcastle. Fletcher Sharp cut them to pieces. Dylan Lucas tore up their right edge. I was hoping that we get Brad Schneider playing down that right edge and getting spotted up against Gideon Katonga, who is in some rare form right now. But he'll have to settle for trying to trample over Nathan Cleary, who is just a little bit better defensively, just a little bit. But yeah, where did the Eels win this one, mate? We don't want to drag out the podcast too much longer now. We've gone off over the hour. But what are the key matchups here? Because the Eels, they played their best football of the season without their 2 best players in Lomax and, 2 of their best players. Some people might value certain different positions higher, but Lomax and Moses obviously super talented. But we saw a host of players step up. Isaiah Iongi, Jordan Samrani coming in to play centre in the emergency. Jack Williams, Junior Barlow, Riley Smith. We mentioned Gideon, but Kilmore had a great stint off the bench. Jermaine Hopgood played his best game of the season, which I think that should not be slept on. I've been very critical of Jermaine's form this year, 60s, and I don't know whether he's carrying an injury. And if he is, that's a separate conversation. But he had one silly error in the play of the ball, but beyond that, played really solid football. And you saw how much his impact was reflected in the rotation strategy from Jason Riles, who held Dylan Walker back much longer than he has all year. And if anything, that almost played perfectly into the Eels' hands. It allowed them to roll momentum even more aggressively into that second quarter of the game, and it allowed Dylan Walker to take the contest away from Manly.
Yeah. John, a couple of things. First of all, a question for you. This Penrith team, the starting 13, how close is that to the best 13 they could name? Have they got too many out? I mean, I'm not a...
Well, Alamoti's out on
Yeah, that's a decision.
On
that's
decision,
not
exactly.
Yeah.
Here we go. Have a quick gander. Is this okay? This is
their injury list.
Yeah, I'm having a quick gander here. So no Ice, no Isaiah Papali'i, who's out for a couple of weeks with an MCL injury. Luke Garner's in concussion protocols, and he's a core part of their team, but I would argue that he's not that great. Like, he's a guy for them. I don't think they're too far off full strength based on that. They're the headline members of that injury list. Sony Luke is a depth dummy half, and he's ruptured his bicep, so he's out until later in the year. And I'm seeing a bunch of young guys, including former Parramatta Pathways player John Fanua, who I know the plan was to get him some NRL time this year, but he's not part of the core part of the team. So I don't think they're too far off where this is their team 60s. Like, obviously there is no doubt Ice comes onto that team, whether it's benched or starting, and indications being it'll be off the bench based on what we've seen this year.
Yeah, so their interchange would be stronger. So so the starting 13 aren't with maybe Luke Garner playing in the centres, perhaps for younger McLean.
And Alamotti, if he was in form back in form,
whatever,
whatever the issue is there,
he's available, so
and
we can't.
The other one was Liam Henry was suspended for the Crusher.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Again,
okay, so I think it's a case of their interchange would be stronger, but that starting 13 is very, very close to their best starting 13. So I'll just tuck that away for one moment. This is a Penrith team that is going to be more desperate than at any time they've been in the last 5 years.
Yep.
Because a loss this week, and they would be very, very close to writing off the season, because they'd fall 3 points behind Parramatta, anchored alone at the bottom of the table, and with not too many games that they could play with. Now, could they go on a run and go for an extended period of being unbeaten? Of course they could. They're the four-time premiership winning team, even allowing for players that the salary cap has forced to depart their team. So I have respect for them, but this is a different circumstance for them. So when they've played sudden death finals football, they've succeeded every time. This is almost a case of a sudden death game.
I agree. Yeah, you look at round 13, and they are, again, we quickly pull up the ladder, they got three and a half wins, 60s, 3 wins, 1 draw. The Eels, not like we've kicked clear of them, we've only got 4 wins, but I know that the top 8 is congested, or at least the back sort of 5-6 teams of it, and that means that it's not too far from the 8 from the bottom of the ladder still. But right now the Broncos are at 5 wins, so they're 1.5 wins back. If you slip to because they've got the draw, it's a little bit weird, but let's say 3 wins is sort of like the cutoff there. If they go to, it'll be 3.5 for them. If they end up dropping back 3.5 wins, that is so much ground they have to claw back, and they're just 2 games away from dropping to that thing. And if they lose to the Eels this week, they're on the precipice.
Yeah, they absolutely are. As I said, it's not impossible after that, but it's not a position that they want to be in.
And you start watching results elsewhere, and that's never a good place to be in.
So whilst they've been in sudden death positions before, I doubt they've ever been in a situation where maybe their confidence is at a bit of a low. Now, they have to have taken a hammering in terms of their confidence. Now, the fact that they are probably fielding close to their best 13 starters this week means they could maybe be looking around the sheds before the game and take confidence in who's taking the field with them. They still see some big stars that are there. So for when you asked me, how do the Eels win this? They win it by getting on top early. They win it by making Penrith question themselves.
Yeah.
Make it the situation where it is tougher for them to score points than it's been at any time in the past. Put the points on them, and that sounds so basic, so uninsightful that you go, well, what are you saying, Craig? Just score more points than them, right?
No, concede less points. Concede less points.
Yeah, but if the Eels can do that from the start, this is where I think the mind games can start with Penrith.
Yeah, you start eating away their self-confidence, exactly. And what I will say to that, which maybe speaks against it, 60s, is that I think the result against Manly was important for this last week. No Moses, no Lomax, obviously, but they were behind on the scoreboard. And they went down with scoreboard pressure, but instead of not crumbling, but they've certainly been, prior to this month of football, they've been prone to getting a little bit panicked and starting to break away from systems. And that you mentioned, that self-doubt, literally evidence of it right there for the Eels. They weren't trusting in the systems that Riles, Brown, Wisemantle, and Muller had put in there. Against Manly, they conceded first points. They just went back to work. They went back and they dominated Manly through the middle. And that's a sort of approach to the game that if they can bring that to this game on Sunday, that even if they do go down the early points, then they'll absolutely be in the box seat. And I think that's, I hope, and you can maybe chatters and watchers and listeners can come back and call me out right or wrong here. I do hope that game against Manly can now be a turning point in the season. It was the building ascension, like whatever fancy word you want to use for it, the not climax, but like an important plateau to you being building, and now this is your new normal. And now you're going to, maybe you go here for a bit and then you're going to go up again. And you didn't see my hand at all because my camera's too locked in there. But I hope that effort against Manly is now the blueprint. And they're not going to have great games every week. That's football. You're going to have off games and make mistakes here and there. But they got behind against Manly. And the Seagulls had the flashy talent out wide, more so than Penrith have right now. Penrith's backline looks far more mortal. Not to say they can't score points, but Leah Hapawadi up against Joash Papali on short notice is not the matchup we had in plan. So, I do think that, based on what you said, setting the tone, being physical and dominant early on and asking the questions that are going to make Penrith maybe shirk a little bit. And, based on what we saw against Manly, they can do it.
Yeah. So that's, first of all, that scoreboard pressure, but also not just the scoreboard pressure, but, if we're having moments where we're dominating them, and this is why I said the forwards really have to lift. It's why I said I want to see the three sort of positional changes before the game starts, because I keep coming back to that start setting a tone. And although we fell behind against the Seagulls last week, the start had still been quite strong from the Eels, and we took control just after clawing it back against the Seagulls. The other thing, John, is a part that the fans can play.
Yeah, if the home away from home game, exactly.
Yep. This is a Penrith home game, but if Eels supporters get out there in numbers,
get that noise bouncing around CommBank.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that the Penrith supporters aren't travelling, even though it's like 25 minutes down the road.
Yeah, after a few bad losses that are, in spite of 4 premierships, that the wagons start falling off on the bandwagon, or the wheels start falling off the bandwagon.
It's extraordinary, but Penrith fans, you've got 4 straight titles, you've got 5 grand finals in a row. You know what Parramatta supporters would give for that, but anyway, Parramatta supporters, turn up. Make the noise there in the stadium. embarrass the Panthers supporters in the stadium that is their home ground for this week, because this is remind them they're actually in Parramatta territory.
Yeah, and the Eels took advantage of that against the West Tigers, and time to do it against the Penrith Panthers. I like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, time for our predictions.
Yeah, time
John.
for the predictions. All right, Parramatta Eels, they're going to win this one, 60s. I think we're going to be in accord there. They're playing good football. And the best part is that they've had some losses along the way, so it's not like we're setting ourselves a trip up here. I think this is a chance to go back to back to back, right? Get our third straight win, be an important milestone for Jason Rolls and the squad. And they go out there, and I think they get the job done. My concern is, and I was joking with Chris Ricketts on Wednesday night, was that Nathan Cleary's kicking bloody nothing on Wednesday, and you just know he's going to kick everything on Sunday. And Ricketts was quick on the trigger with the reply saying, well, he's not going to kick a goal when the Eels win 32-0. I'll take some similar energy there from our good co-host and good mate there. And Eels to win, I'd love a 30-point win. I'll be controlled, 28 points to Penrith 10. Got the best on field. I backed Gideon last week. I could back him again. I'll go for the Fox, who's just been extended. I think that's going to bring even more energy. And in a similar vein, first try scorer. If he's going to be best on field, he's going to bag a few, including the opening try, Josh Adokar.
Okay, like it. Okay, I'll go Eels 26-18, with the Panthers having 3 converted tries there, and we might pick up a penalty goal for 4 on top of 4 converted tries. I think the goal kicking from both kickers will be a lot better this week. Lomax and also Nathan Cleary. Best on field, I think I'm going to go with Riley Smith with this one against his former club, the club that did want him. And first try scorer, let's go with the Ibis, Jordan Samrani.
Yep. And Zach Lomax will be first in there from the other side.
Yeah, Zach Lomax, now known as Snorkel. Is that right?
Did you see Jason? Did he just say that about?
Yeah.
The vibes are good at the joint when your coach and your players are having fun with that. But yeah.
So we got the Snorkel and we got the Ibis out there in this game. Okay, so John, thank you for really holding things together on TCT this week. I really appreciate it, mate. And thank you again, as I said, to all the people who reached out and sent messages this week. Things will move forward. Very happy, very confident about that. Thanks to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and to Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels. Don't forget the event this week, Sunday 1:30 to 3:30 in Surlos. John, we also didn't mention the passing of Alf Hemsworth.
Yes.
Eels player number 68.
Correct.
Who played between 1951 and 1953. So he's one of the pioneer players in the Eels club. He passed away at the age of 92. So we send our condolences to the Hemsworth family. And apart from that, John, as we look forward to this weekend, there's only one thing to say: go you mighty Eels.